Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you, Mbangazita, for allowing me to go in your spot. Good afternoon, Mr. O'Sullivan. I'm going to start here because I mean I've heard you raising this issue with a number of the members just on the terms of reference. So the terms of reference require us to investigate any related claims regarding corruption, financial or otherwise, bribery, misuse of public resources within SAPS or any other institution, and then evaluating the extent of misconduct, unethical behavior by members of SAPS and any other relevant individuals or institution. So I need you to understand, you know, our engagement in that light. You testified here, and I think from what you've heard coming out from the members, there's obviously a lot of concern about what is perceived as your infiltration of the intelligence services. And sorry, the SAPS and intelligence services. So tell me, this process, yesterday you were asked about your appointment as a police reservist. What was the process for the appointment of a reservist? You indicated the husband to your PA saw you, but what was the actual process?
So let's just pick it up from my memory. My secretary suggested I should meet with the husband, which I did. And he told me that I would have to go and do training. I would have to fill in forms, and they would carry out the criminal record check on me. And if I passed the training, I would become a police reservist. And that's what I did. And when I became a police reservist, my initial activity as a police reservist was crime prevention, which was...
May you please get closer to the microphone?
Sorry. My initial work as a police reservist was crime prevention. And then, not Major Edwards, but another person, I can't remember his name, and I think he was a colonel. It's a long time ago. He said to me, actually, there's a course coming up, you can go and do some training to become a detective.
Okay, so I want to come back to that, Mr. O'Sullivan, but just tell me, do you remember what the requirements to become a police reservist were?
Yes, you had to be able to give, I think, 8 hours a week. You had to have no criminal record. You had to be able to drive.
Let me tell you what they are now. So in order to be appointed as a reservist in the South African Police Service, you must be a South African citizen by birth. You must be between the ages of 25 and 40. Then there's a whole other a number of requirements which I won't go into. But then a person may not be appointed under the following circumstances. So you cannot appoint anybody who is in private investigation services and then it breaks them down. So there was no requirement to be a South African citizen when you joined the police reservists?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, having ascertained that then, you now say that you joined this, so at this point, I think you're probably a permanent resident. You join criminal detection, you said.
So, when I first joined, I was based at what was then called Halfway House. It's now called Midra. And we were doing crime prevention duties, which they were pairing us up with permanent members of the service. And you had to wear a uniform and you go out with them and you did crime prevention patrols. Sometimes you'd be doing first attendance at a scene of a crime or a traffic accident or something of that nature. And then I think 2 or 3 months after that happened, I was invited by a colonel, I can't remember his name. He said to me that there's a training course going, we need some reservist detectives. And the training took place in Pretoria. And you had to be able to spend 3 or 4 weeks full-time on this training, would I be prepared to go? And I said, yes, I would like to do that. So I went.
Okay, I know what you are talking about because reservists have two categories. One is functional policing, which is a general policing function that you're talking about, and you only wear uniform there only after you've completed specific training. Then the second category is specialized operational support, which would then be the people who have particular skills or expertise, such as detectives. Now, my first issue is you saying it was only after 3 months instead of the ordinary 3 to 5 years that you can move from functional policing to specialized. Yours only took 3 months?
That's what they asked me at the time. So I don't know what it is today, but then that's what they asked me to do. So I was happy to do that. And then after I completed that training, they assigned me to Boyson's police station. And I went and I worked there as a detective.
Okay. So to now move from this category of specialized operational support to move to it, you must have had particular skills or expertise that could be used by SAP, perform specific functions within his or her expertise. So you joined essentially functional policing, you were identified for training, and then you moved to the second category, which is only reserved for people with specialized skills where you didn't have any.
So I think at that moment in time, what you've just described now, and I mean, obviously I haven't been in the reservist for almost 30 years, so it's a long time ago. But I think the current situation isn't what prevailed back then. And I don't have any copies of what prevailed then, but I don't think it was anything like you just explained.
Okay, so I suppose, you know, coming into a foreign country, you are a permanent resident, you move quickly. Okay, let's leave it. You're saying you don't quite think it was the same. But in your opinion then, Mr. O'Sullivan, don't you see anything strange with a former foreign intelligence operative coming in and, you know, whether the rules were tightened or not, but coming into the country, then over the next couple of years, becomes so deeply embedded in our law enforcement and even intelligence structures of essentially what is another country? I mean, you were a foreign intelligence operative, like we've gathered. Is this normal to you?
I don't know what's normal, but at the time I didn't see anything wrong with it because I wasn't going to be involved in any intelligence activity. And by the way, at the time, I was a long time out of doing any work of anything to do with military or intelligence. I was a long time out of it, probably 10 years or more. So I ceased to be involved in any intelligence activity 10 years before I joined the police reservists.
But I mean, the training stays with you, right?
Well, I suppose some of it, but as I pointed out before, I was involved in counter-operations, so I wasn't involved in spying and stuff like that. So.
Okay, I'll come to that. Now, during the training, you mentioned that President Ramaphosa was one of the 1,500 reservists you trained. Who else did you train? I'm sure you may remember some of them. And how did it come about that you got to train President Ramaphosa?
So at the time, President Ramaphosa wasn't the president. He was a businessman. And how he came to be on the course, my understanding, and maybe you need to ask him, but how I understand he became on the course, he was a chairman or director of a company called, if I think, maybe JCI, something like that. So I had bought some properties from JCI, by the way. They were selling stands at a development in Dainfern. And I bought some properties there. These stands were being sold cheaply because it was just started. But as it grew, the value of the properties went up. And I think I bought three stands there. And then what happened, although that had nothing to do with Cyril Ramaphosa, these courses would take place, and I was not involved in the decision as to who should be on the courses. I would just arrive there and we've got a new course starting and I would see the students that would be sitting there. So I had no knowledge.
Sorry to interrupt.
But my understanding is that, I'm trying to remember his name now, Mayor Khan, at the time was the CEO of South African Breweries. And Mayor Khan apparently had a meeting with Cyril Ramaphosa, Mr. Ramaphosa, and suggested to him it would be good to demonstrate the need to have more police reservists because crime problems in Johannesburg were becoming a bit hectic. And my understanding is that he decided, oh, this is a good idea. At the time, he was living in Fairlands or in Northcliffe, somewhere there. And he took a decision that he wanted to become a police reservist. Now, after he completed his training, he would have then been assigned to Fairlands Police Station. So I would have not been involved in whatever work he did after that. But I was only responsible for those aspects of his training that sit in here. I was not involved in his firearm training or his marching.
Thank you, Mr. Silverman. What led to Ms. Sarah Jane Trent terminating her employee in your company?
I think she'd been there about 7 years, and she indicated that she wanted to move on. You know, if you've got a small business, you can reach a point where there's no further room to grow. And she indicated that she wanted to move on.
Okay. Are you still on good speaking terms with her?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, when she left, she said, oh, must I hand my laptop back or whatever? And I said, you know what? It's yours. You can keep it. She'd been using it for a number of years.
Okay. I'm going to try and move quite quickly before I run out of time. I'm going back to the permanent residency. You said to Honorable Malema, you had money to purchase property because of the rand-dollar exchange rate. Now, around 1984, the exchange rate was close to parity. I think it was £1, rand pound. It was £1 to R1.60 for most of the decade. Do you still stand by the fact that you raised your money through, you know, those fluctuations in exchange rate?
Yes, in fact, at the time, Chairman, we had a thing going in the country which was intended to induce investors to come into the country, and they called it the financial rand. So I can't remember what the ratio was, but they practically doubled your money. And at the time, when I brought the funds in, the first batch of funds, the exchange rate, if I remember, was 190 or 181 or something like that to the pound. And we ended up getting 3 rand to the pound. So it automatically boosted the amount of cash that you brought in. But you could only, you couldn't bring that cash in and then have it as cash. You could only bring it in if you invested. So you had to buy property or you had to invest in a company or something like that. Okay. So I brought money in on the financial rand.
So let's talk about the investment then. So in 1986, you invest in property in South Africa. In 1989, you apply for permanent residency and you say as a person of independent means. Now, owning property or investing in property in South Africa does not automatically lead to permanent residency. I mean, regardless of how long it's been held. And I think you'll know the criteria for residency. So I think the only exception to that is if your property price or the property value is in excess of 12 million rand in today's money net worth, then you become this financially independent person who can then get a permanent residency. So is this the point that you're making, is that the portfolio that you held at that time was so large that it was only on the basis of it that you got your permanent residency?
No, so it wouldn't be whether you have property or not property. You had to demonstrate that you're a person of independent means. And I don't know what the rules were that they use, but you sit down and you explain what assets you have and what liabilities you have. And they make a decision then that you either are a person of independent means or you're not. And they decided that I was a a person of independent means. I had to attend South Africa House in Trafalgar Square in London and be interviewed. And I carried out the interview. And I think 3-4 months later, by that stage, I already owned a house here, but I only came as a visitor. And 3-4 months later, I got a phone call from the embassy and they said, okay, your application has been approved. You must come in and pick up your permanent residence certificate. So I went in and I picked up my permanent residence certificate. And then I had to activate it within 3 months. So I had to come and live here within 3 months, which I did.
Okay. I suppose the point that I'm getting to, Mr. O'Sullivan, is that a lot of things either changed for you or you managed to do a lot of things that ordinary people don't get to do, you know? So you were either extremely wealthy for your permanent residence could have been processed that quickly. You moved quickly through the reservist program. Yeah, but I'm just saying there's something there. You were asked yesterday about your knowledge of the situation in South Africa, and I'm linking this to what you were talking about, your work in counter-espionage. So you insisted that you worked largely with the Irish Republic Army, counter-espionage as it relates to the IRA. Am I correct?
I didn't work with the IRA.
I mean, you did counter-espionage work in relation to the IRA.
The counter-terrorism activity.
Okay. IRA is the Irish Republic Army, am I right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you're of Irish origin, you lived in the UK, and you did work with the IRA. I would assume...
For the record, I didn't work with the IRA.
What is the English term? I think I'm losing the word. You were working against the IRA? You were investigating, spying? I'm sorry, I don't know the right word to use.
So the purpose was to make sure, it was to combat the terrorist activities
of the IRA.
Yes, in the early 70s, things were happening. They were setting off bombs here and there.
That's where I'm coming. Yeah. That's where I'm coming, Mr. O'Sullivan. So the IRA is long thought to be the armed wing of Sinn Féin. And I'm sure as you were countering the work of the IRA, you would know that. Sinn Féin and the African National Congress have got a very, very long relationship dating back to, even before the early 80s, but definitely while you were busy with the IRA. You also, your roots to Ireland, you've spoken about, you had Ireland, Netherlands being some of the most vocal anti-apartheid movements at that time. Now, with you working to counter the IRA, you have never come across the history of South Africa, the African National Congress, and the struggle that was being undertaken in this country.
So I think this was, Chairman, this was put to me yesterday, and I explained that I was very young then, and I was low down on the pecking order. I wasn't involved.
But Mr. O'Sullivan, your work is to know what the IRA is doing, which speaks to all of their tentacles, their Sinn Féins, and...
It was operational work. It wasn't intelligence work. It was counter-terrorism. It was operational work.
So you don't need to understand anything about them in the course of doing that?
If I was at this level, and there were other levels, it would be the people up here somewhere, the senior people, that would have been involved in all that. I had no knowledge. I didn't even know what the ANC was in those days.